Dad, you want to give me a gift? Disappear. Forever. Those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. My 17-year-old son Derek was standing there in our kitchen, staring me down with eyes full of hatred I didn't recognize. The birthday cake was still smoking on the table. 17 candles Quinn had just blown out because he wouldn't even make a wish. Derek, don't talk to your father like that, Quinn whispered, but her voice was shaking. No, Mom, I'm done pretending. I'm done with his controlling bullshit. I'm done with him thinking he can fix everything by throwing money at it. Derek kicked the chair so hard it slammed against the wall. You want to know what I really want for my birthday, Dad? I want you gone. Out of this house. Out of my life. Forever. His little sister Zoe started sobbing. Actually sobbing. The kind of crying that comes from watching your family explode right in front of you. But Derek didn't even look at her. He just kept staring at me with pure rage. I'd been looking forward to this day for months. I had his car detailed. This Honda Civic I'd been fixing up in my garage for weeks. I ordered his favorite chocolate cake, even took the day off work. Something I never do as a construction foreman. I thought maybe this would be the day we'd finally connect again after 3 years of constant fighting. Instead, I was standing there holding car keys to a gift my son didn't want, watching my perfect day crumble in seconds. You think this piece of junk makes up for being a terrible father? Derek grabbed the keys from my hand and threw them across the room. They hit the refrigerator with a loud crash. You think taking 1 day off work fixes 3 years of treating me like a prisoner? The room went silent, except for Zoe's crying. Quinn froze with her coffee cup halfway to her lips, tears starting to form in her eyes. I felt like the biggest failure in the world. But you know what? If this story teaches you anything, it's that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually the beginning of something we never saw coming. So if you want to see how this ends, and trust me, you won't believe what happens next. Make sure you subscribe, because this story is about to take a turn that will change everything you think you know about being a father. My name is Addison Harrison. I'm 45 years old, and I've been a construction foreman here in Denver, Colorado for the past 20 years. I've built houses with my own 2 hands, coached Little League every weekend, and I've never backed down from a fight when it really mattered. That's just who I am. Quinn and I have been married for 22 years. 22 years of building a life together, raising our kids, making memories. She's the kind of woman who still packs my lunch every morning and leaves little notes in my toolbox. Zoe just turned 12 last month, and she's this bright, bubbly kid who still thinks her dad can fix anything. At least, she used to think that. But Derek was different. He wasn't just my son, he was my best buddy, my shadow. When he was little, maybe 8 or 9 years old, he'd follow me to every construction site wearing this tiny hard hat I bought him. He'd carry around his own plastic tools, pretending to work right alongside me. The kid wanted to be just like his old man, and honestly, that made me prouder than any house I'd ever built. We spent hours in the backyard throwing football until Quinn would call us in for dinner. Derek had this laugh. This pure, genuine laugh that could light up the whole neighborhood. He told me everything. His dreams, his fears, what happened at school, who he had a crush on. We were tight, really tight. But somewhere around his 14th birthday, everything changed. And I mean everything. It was like someone flipped a switch and the kid I knew just disappeared. Suddenly, my shadow didn't want to be around me anymore. The hard hat gathered dust in the garage. The football stayed in the closet. For the past 3 years, I've watched my son Derek transform from my best buddy into someone I didn't recognize. Someone who looked at me like I was the enemy. Someone who seemed to hate everything I stood for. The respect was gone. The conversation stopped. Even basic civility became a struggle. I tried everything. Family dinners, father-son activities, heart-to-heart talks that went nowhere. Quinn kept telling me it was just teenage stuff, that he'd grow out of it. But this wasn't a normal teenage rebellion. This was something deeper, something darker. I could feel it in my gut. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that someone was deliberately destroying my family from the inside. Someone had targeted us, studied us, found our weaknesses, and was systematically tearing us apart piece by piece. While I was blaming myself for being a bad father, while I was lying awake at night wondering where I went wrong, there was a predator working in the shadows. And when you mess with a man's children, when you deliberately set out to destroy everything he's worked his whole life to build, you better be ready for war. Because that's exactly what was coming. The disrespect escalated fast. Derek started staying out until 2 a.m. on school nights. When I ask where he'd been, he just shrugs and says around. I'd set a curfew, he ignored it. I'd ground him, he sneaked out his bedroom window. Then I started noticing things that didn't add up. Expensive clothes appeared in his closet. Designer hoodies, Jordan sneakers that cost more than I made in a week. When I asked Derek where they came from, he said his friends let him borrow them. But these weren't borrowed clothes. These had tags on them. One day, I found cash hidden in his dresser drawer. A thick roll of 20s and 50s. Maybe $300–400. When I confronted him, Derek exploded. You went through my stuff? This is exactly why I can't stand you, Dad. You're so controlling. But behind those bills, I found a burner phone. A cheap flip phone that wasn't the iPhone we'd bought him. When I asked about it, Derek snatched it away like I grabbed a live wire. That's when I started paying attention to patterns. Jake Miller's kid, his dad was deployed, suddenly acting like Derek. Tommy Rodriguez down the street, his dad was Navy, same story. All these military kids, all with expensive clothes and attitude problems. And they all had the same new friend. A guy named Carter Webb who looked way too old to be hanging around high schoolers. Mid-20s, always wore a baseball cap, drove a nice car. I'd see him picking up these kids after school, dropping them off at random corners instead of their houses. I started keeping notes, license plates, times and locations. I even took pictures when I could. Derek wasn't just rebelling. He was being manipulated by a predator who specialized in targeting military families like mine. This morning was supposed to be different, Derek's 17th birthday. I'd been working on this Honda Civic in my garage for months. Nights, weekends, every spare moment I had. New engine, fresh paint job, custom stereo system. I wanted it to be perfect because I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the gesture that brought my son back to me. When I handed Derek those keys, I was actually nervous. My hands were shaking a little because this moment meant everything to me. I put my heart into that car, and I was putting my heart on the line. Derek looked at those keys like I just handed him a piece of garbage. The disappointment on his face was immediate and brutal. "This piece of junk?" he said, holding the keys like they disgusted him. "You think this makes up for being a terrible father?" Zoe had been so excited about her big brother's birthday. She saved her allowance for weeks to buy him a video game. But when Derek started yelling, she just crumpled. Started sobbing these heartbroken sobs that cut right through me. "You're suffocating me, Dad," Derek continued. "You don't trust me. You don't respect me. You think throwing money at problems fixes everything." Quinn was begging him to stop, to apologize, but he wasn't done. "You know what I really want for my birthday? I want you gone. Out of this house. Out of my life. Forever." The words hit me like physical blows. But here's the thing. As Derek was screaming at me, as he was telling me he wanted me to disappear forever, I was watching his eyes. Really watching them. And what I saw wasn't hatred. It was fear. Pure, terrified fear. Derek's hands were shaking. His voice was cracking. This wasn't the confident rebellion of a teenager who hated his father. This was the desperate performance of a kid who was scared out of his mind. If you're enjoying this story and want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because what I discovered next will blow your mind. That's when I knew for certain. My son wasn't the enemy. Someone else was pulling his strings, feeding him lines, making him say things that were destroying our family. Derek wasn't trying to hurt me. He was trying to protect me from something I couldn't see yet. And whoever was manipulating my 17-year-old son, whoever was using his fear to tear my family apart, they were about to learn what happens when you turn a father's love into rage. I stood there for 30 seconds, watching my wife cry, listening to my daughter sob, looking at my son's terrified eyes. Then I grabbed my keys and walked out. Not because I was giving up, but because I finally understood that the real fight wasn't with Derek. The real fight was with Carter Webb. But before I tell you what happened when I left that house, I need to ask you something. If you were in my shoes and you discovered this, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments, because what I'm about to share will change everything you think you know about this story. I drove straight to Riley's diner and parked in the back lot where I knew I wouldn't be disturbed. My hands were still shaking from what had just happened, but now it wasn't from hurt. It was from anger. Pure, focused anger. I pulled out my phone and called Kai Thompson. Kai and I went way back. We served together overseas, and now he was a detective with Denver PD. More importantly, he owed me a favor from when I helped him build his deck last summer. Kai, it's Addison. I need you to run a name for me. Carter Webb. Mid-20s, drives a nice car, hangs around Jefferson High School. There was a pause. Addison, what's this about? Just run the name, man, please. Within 20 minutes, Kai called me back. What he told me made my blood run cold. Carter Webb had a record. Not just any record, a pattern. 3 different states, 5 different charges related to corrupting minors, drug distribution near schools, and something called criminal exploitation of vulnerable families. Most of the charges had been dropped due to lack of evidence or witness intimidation. But that wasn't the worst part. Addison, Kai said, his voice serious, I'm sending you some photos we have in his file. You're not gonna like what you see. When those photos came through on my phone, I had to pull over. There were pictures of Carter with Derek and 3 other kids I recognized from the neighborhood. All military kids, all looking absolutely terrified. In one photo, Derek's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. He looked like he was about to throw up. This wasn't a kid hanging out with a cool older friend. This was a kid being controlled by someone who scared him to death. The other kids looked the same. Jake Miller's son Tommy, the Rodriguez boy, even little Sarah Chen, whose dad was deployed in Germany. All of them looked like hostages, not friends. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just drug dealing. This wasn't even just some creep preying on teenagers. This was systematic psychological manipulation of children whose fathers were deployed or working long hours. Carter studied military families, identified our weaknesses, and exploited them. He knew guys like me worked 60-hour weeks to provide for our families. He knew we were sometimes gone for weeks at a time. He knew our kids felt abandoned, neglected, looking for someone to fill that void, and he positioned himself as that someone. But Carter made one critical mistake. He'd studied military families, but he underestimated what happens when you threaten children of workers like me. He thought he could manipulate Derek, control him through fear, and I'd just accept losing my son. He was wrong. I sat in that parking lot for another hour, making more calls, gathering more information. By the time I was done, I had Carter's address, his daily routine, the names of at least 6 other families he was targeting, and a plan. Carter Webb thought he was smart. He thought he could destroy families and disappear before anyone caught on. But he'd messed with the wrong family this time. When I drove past my house an hour later, my heart nearly stopped. Police cars everywhere, 2 patrol units, and an unmarked sedan in my driveway. Red and blue lights flashing. Derek was being led away in handcuffs. But Officer Easton, a guy I knew from Zoe's Little League team, looked straight at me and gave me this look that said, "This isn't what it seems." Quinn was on the front porch, hysterical. I called her phone while shaking hands. "Quinn, what's happening?" Through her tears, she could barely speak. Derek called them. Derek called the police himself. "What do you mean?" He confessed everything about Carter. He's been gathering evidence for months, Addison. The burner phone? He was recording Carter's threats. The attitude, pushing you away. Carter made him do it. Carter threatened to hurt us if Derek didn't cooperate. Everything I thought I knew came crashing down. Carter told Derek that if his family got involved, he'd hurt you first. He'd hurt Zoe. Derek has been protecting us this whole time. Quinn's voice broke. When you walked out today, Derek thought he lost you forever. So he called the police and confessed everything. He said he would rather go to jail than let Carter hurt his family anymore. I sat there watching my son disappear into that police car, realizing that every terrible thing he said to me, he was trying to save my life. Derek had been protecting us for 3 years, and I just walked away when he needed me most. That's when my heartbreak turned into something cold and calculated. Derek had sacrificed 3 years to protect us from Carter Webb. Now it was my turn to protect Derek. Over the next 48 hours, I used every contact I made in 20 years of construction work. Tommy from security got me camera footage showing Carter with the kids, clear evidence of money changing hands, Derek looking terrified. My buddy Jake traced Carter's burner phone records. Sarah from banking found his financial trail across 4 different cities. I built a case that would bury Carter Webb forever. But the real moment came when Derek was released on bail. He walked into our living room, saw me sitting there, and just broke down. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I thought if I pushed you away, Carter couldn't hurt you. I was trying to protect everyone, but I just made it worse. I made you hate me." For the first time in 3 years, my son hugged me. Really hugged me, like when he was little. I held him while he cried. "I never hated you, son. I never gave up on you." Through his tears, Derek looked at me and made a promise. "Dad, I want to be the man you raised me to be. I want to earn back your trust, Zoe's trust, Mom's trust. I'll do whatever it takes. But please don't give up on me." That's when I knew we were going to be okay. Carter Webb had tried to destroy my family, but all he'd done was show me how strong we really were. Derek looked me straight in the eye that day and said something I'll never forget. "Dad, I want to be the man you raised me to be. I want to earn back your trust, Zoe's trust, Mom's trust. I'll go to counseling, I'll get my grades up, I'll do whatever it takes. But please don't give up on me." And you know what? My son kept every single word of that promise. Carter Webb got 15 years in federal prison for trafficking and extortion. The evidence we gathered helped prosecutors build cases in 4 different states. 3 other military families got their kids back. Kids who'd been living the same nightmare Derek had been trapped in for years. But that wasn't the real victory. The real victory was watching Derek transform back into the son I'd always known was there. He started counseling the next week. Not because the court ordered it, but because he wanted to deal with the trauma of what Carter had put him through. He worked with Dr. Martinez twice a week, learning how to process what had happened and how to rebuild trust with his family. His grades? Derek went from failing 3 classes to making the honor roll within a semester. Then he made a high honor roll. By senior year, he was valedictorian, something none of us saw coming after 3 years of academic struggle. He got into Colorado State on a full academic scholarship. My son, who was manipulated into nearly destroying his future, earned a free ride to college through pure determination. If you're wondering how this story ends and want to see more incredible family stories like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because you won't believe some of the other situations I've encountered in my years as a father and construction foreman. But here's the part that means the most to me. Every Sunday, Derek and I throw football in the backyard until Quinn calls us in for dinner. Just like when he was 10 years old, except now we talk about college, his future, the construction business he might want to take over someday. Zoe adores her big brother again. She brags about him to her friends, tells everyone how Derek helped catch a bad guy who was hurting kids. Quinn smiles when she watches us together, probably remembering those early days when Derek was my shadow. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy. Sometimes it's rebuilding what they tried to tear down and making it stronger than before. Carter Webb thought he could destroy the Harrison family. Instead, he taught us just how unbreakable we really are. Before I finish this story, I have to ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where you realized that someone you thought was working against you was actually trying to protect you? Share your story in the comments below, because sometimes the people we think are our enemies are actually our greatest heroes. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.